Alright guys, we're going to talk about something near and dear to my heart. We're going to talk about 351 swaps. So, in specific, we're going to talk about exhaust and headers. There are a lot of difference of opinions about headers and exhaust for a 351 swap. Now I will tell you this, I used 351 swap headers because I went from a V6 to a 351. So it made no sense for me to buy 302 parts. So do you need a specific 351 swap header? I guess that depends on who you ask. So if you look at the 351 Windsor, you look at the deck height of it versus the 302. A deck height is the measurement of the center line of the crankshaft to the top of the block where the head mounts onto it. So that measurement on a 302 is 8.2. That measurement on a 351, any guesses? 9.5. So if you are going to go from an 8.2 deck height to a 9.5 deck height, that's 1.3 inches of difference. The issue is that the deck height on a 351 is taller than a 302. So if you use 302 headers, they will move the collector wherever it's at. It will move it up and away by 1.3 inches. At least up from the center line. Now the width is also different in that too, so you're going to have the width will change a little bit as well. So there's a lot of people that'll tell you that 302 headers will work on a 351 swap, and I personally haven't done it, but I know people who have, and they said that they were able to make it work. So if you have 302 headers that will fit the heads on your 351, can you make it work? Yeah, more than likely. But on my specific project, I didn't want to have to make it work. I just wanted it to work. So the 351 swap headers will actually, they change the geometry of the collectors, right? So they put the collectors where a stock 302 Mustang should be. So using a 351 swap header will actually make the install easier. Can you make the 302 parts work? Yeah, of course. I mean, you can make anything work if you want to. So, do you absolutely need a 351 swap header? No, you don't need it. If you've got 302 headers, you can probably make them work. And that's just coming from experience of people telling me this. I didn't want to have to make it work, like I said. So, if you have the option to buy the 351 swap headers, I would suggest doing that. And I'll leave some links in the description. A lot of the stuff I get's off Amazon, so I mean, I'll leave some links in the description so you guys can check it out. But the 351 swap specific headers, in my opinion, are the way to go. But that also depends on what heads you have. So sometimes people get a lot, so like your GT40 heads and a lot of that other stuff for a 351. The header size is like 1 5/8 inches. I mean, it's nothing. It's not crazy, but there's actually some heads out there, a lot of heads out there actually that have a larger header size, and you'll have to get different 351 swap headers. So the standard ones that I'm gonna give you a link to are, you know, if you got regular heads, you know, nothing fancy, that don't require like a 1 3/4 tube or 1 7/8 or something like that. But I'll leave those links in the description. So that is pretty much it for the headers. I would recommend a 351 swap specific header. It's a little bit more money, but it's going to save you time on install. The 302 headers, you can probably make them work like I said, but it's probably going to be a pain in the butt. I, for one, don't really have the time or the energy to put into stuff like that. So buy the right part the first time and save yourself some time. Now, when you talk about the the rest of the exhaust, can be, if you have a 302, you can use the 302 exhaust with like your catback system. You can use that as long as you use the 351 swap parts. That's what I did. So I bought some used 302 stuff like a catback and an H-pipe, and I used the 351 swap headers with a factory 302 H-pipe and a factory 302 exhaust. So the rest of it, your H-pipe, X-pipe, catback, as long as you have the stuff for a 302 Mustang, you can make that work as long as you get the 351 swap headers. So like, let's say you get the 351 swap shorty headers and you have a factory 302 Mustang, 2.5 inch X-pipe or H-pipe, it'll bolt right up to all that stuff. The catback will work, everything will be good. Where you run into issues is if you don't use the 351 swap headers, like let's say you use a 302 shorty header that you already have, you can make the X-pipe or the H-pipe work, and the catback should still bolt onto that as well. So it kind of depends on which route you want to go. But the rest of the exhaust, you know, the H-pipe, X-pipe, whatever you're going to have, whether it's a full length or a mid-length, if you got long tube headers, all of that stuff is a lot easier. What you want to start with is the headers, right? So if you do, let's say you use a 302 header, we're talking about the headers again, sorry. But if you use a 302 header, that can raise that up a little bit, so your exhaust will be closer to the floor pan. Could create some heat issues, could create some clearance issues. Like I said, you know, I wouldn't recommend it. You could also use like a drop motor mount. That'll get the exhaust to lower back down a little bit to create some clearance issues. But the H-pipe, or you know, your mid-pipe, whatever you want to call it, H-pipe, X-pipe, mid-pipe, that stuff you can use factory 302 stuff. I used a 2.5 inch on my stuff, and I'm running a 408 on mine now. I've seen some comparisons. Actually, Motor Trend did a comparison of a 3 inch exhaust and a 2.5 inch exhaust. And it was negligible. I mean, for the cost, it was like 20 horsepower difference. In my opinion, it's just not worth it. I'm not going to fight for an extra 20 horsepower, throw some more boost added or nitrous or whatever. So that's just kind of my opinion on that. Guys, if you have any more questions or comments about 351 swap exhaust stuff, headers, or whatever, leave them in the comments below. I'll try to answer any questions that I can. And I will also leave a bunch of links in the description for the 351 swap shorty headers that I used, and I'll leave some of the other stuff. Like I said, I always get my stuff off Amazon. Also be on the lookout. I've got a couple of other videos. I've got one for 351 swap fuel injection stuff to make it a little bit easier if you guys have questions about that. I also have another video that I'll be coming out with shortly that will talk about the 351 swap accessories on a Fox body and what you need to know about that stuff. So be on the lookout for that. Aside from that, guys, thanks for watching. I appreciate your time. Have a good one, and we'll see you next time.